The desert trial, the twin suns hung heavy over the desert sky. Heat shimmered above the cracked ground, and the air tasted of dust and thirst. In the center of the alien settlement, a crowd gathered. Their eyes were cold. Their voices were sharp-dot. The heart of the crowd stood a young alien girl, no older than 16. Her skin was pale and dry, showing signs of dehydration. Her wrists were tied with rough rope, and her knees shook as the guards pushed her forward. She clutched nothing. In her hands only the guilt of her crime. She had stolen water on this world. Water was life. Every drop was guarded, measured, and priced like gold. To steal it was not only a crime, it was treason against the order that kept their people alive. And the punishment was always the same. The crowd roared when the executioner stepped forward. His armor was black, his weapon a massive iron hammer designed to crush bone. He raised it high for all to see, the sun glinting off its sharp edges. The girl fell to her knees, trembling. "Please," she cried, her voice thin from thirst. "I only wanted to save my brother. He was dying. He begged for water. I couldn't. Let him die." But her words were drowned by the noise of the crowd. They shouted, "Thief! Lawbreaker! Crush her arm!" The guards forced her down, pinning her arm across a stone block. The hammer was raised, ready to fall. The girl shut her eyes, tears rolling down her dusty cheeks. Her body shook, waiting for the pain that would end her life as she knew it. But just before the hammer fell, a voice cut through the chaos. "Stop." The sound was calm, steady, but filled with power. The crowd went silent. Heads turned. The guards froze. Even the executioner paused, his hammer still raised. From the edge of the square, a figure stepped forward. He was not one of them. He was human. The people stared. They knew of human strange outsiders from another world. Dangerous, stubborn, and wild. Most here had never seen one up close, only heard stories whispered in fear or awe. The man walked with slow, steady steps, his boots crunching against the dry sand. His face was shadowed by the sun, but his eyes burned with defiance. He stopped just a few feet away from the girl and the executioner. His voice was low, but every word carried weight. "She is a child. You will not harm her." The crowd gasped. Murmurs spread like fire. "Did you hear him? He dares to challenge our law? Humans do not understand our ways." The alien elder, who sat on a raised platform, stood and pointed a clawed finger. His voice was filled with venom. "Outsider, this is not your concern. She broke the law. She must pay the price." The human did not move. His gaze stayed fixed on the executioner. "Your law," he said slowly, "is cruelty disguised as order. She wanted water for her brother. Is that a crime worth destroying her for?" The elder's eyes narrowed. "Water is survival. Without law, there is chaos. She must be made an example." The executioner gripped his hammer tighter. The girl looked up through tear-filled eyes. For the first time since her capture, there was a flicker of hope. The human stepped closer, his voice sharp as steel. "Then you will have to go through me." The square erupted into noise. Some shouted in anger, others in disbelief. The guards raised their weapons, surrounding the human. Blades and spears glinted under the suns. The human did not flinch. His stance was calm, but every muscle in his body was ready to move. The executioner growled, "Outsider, step aside, or you will die with her." The human's lips curved into the smallest trace of a smile, not of joy, but of defiance. "Try it." For a moment, no one moved. The desert wind carried only the sound of shifting sand. The alien girl stared, unable to believe what she was seeing. A stranger, a human, had stepped into her nightmare. He had no reason to help her. Yet here he stood, between her and the hammer. Elder slammed his staff on the ground. "Seize him!" The guard stepped forward, weapons ready. The human raised his hand slightly, as if inviting them to strike. His voice carried over the crowd. "You want to crush a child for water? Fine, but the galaxy will hear of this. And they will hear that humans do not stand silent while the innocent are punished." The words struck like thunder. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some of them looked at the girl and then at the human. Doubt flickered in their eyes. The executioner hesitated. For the first time, his hammer did not feel steady in his hands. And in that moment, the trial was no longer about the girl. It was about the human who refused to let her die. The elder's voice shook with rage. "You will regret this, human. You will bring war upon yourself." The human turned his gaze to him, his eyes cold. "War?" he said. "No, what I bring is justice." And with that, the desert trial was no longer a punishment. It had become the spark of something far greater. The human's defiance. The square was silent, but the silence was dangerous. The guards stood tense. Their spears pointed at the human, who now stood between the executioner's hammer and the young alien girl. The girl's eyes were wide, full of fear, but also something new, hope. She whispered, her voice trembling, "Why? Why are you helping me?" The human didn't look at her. His eyes never left the executioner. His voice was calm, but strong. Because no child should lose her arm for a sip of water. The crowd stirred. Some aliens shouted angrily, "He insults our law. Kill him." Others whispered to one another, uncertain. For years, they had lived under harsh rules, never questioning them. But now, here was a human, a stranger, standing against the very heart of their system. The elder raised his staff, his voice filled with rage. "Seize him! Cut him down where he stands." The guards moved forward, their boots grinding against the dry sand. The executioner lifted his hammer again, ready to strike the girl the moment the human fell. But the human raised his hand, not in surrender, but in command. His voice thundered across the square. "Stop!" And to everyone's shock, they did something. In his tone made even hardened soldiers pause. His eyes burned with the fire of someone who had seen war, loss, and bloodshed before. He was not afraid of death, and they knew it. He took a step forward. "You call this law? This is nothing but cruelty. You claim to protect your people, but what do you protect them from? A thirsty child?" The elder snarled. "You do not understand, human. Our world has no mercy. If one steals water today, 10 will steal tomorrow. If we allow weakness, we all die." The human shook his head slowly. His voice cut like a blade. "No, if you kill the innocent to protect the strong, then your people are already dead." The words rippled through the crowd. A few lowered their heads. Others clenched their fists. The elder saw the doubt spreading and slammed his staff again. Silence. "You speak like a fool." "Guards, strike him down." The guards lunged. The human moved. He grabbed the nearest spear, twisting it out of the guard's grip in one motion. With the weapon in his hands, he spun and pushed 2 more guards back. His movements were fast, precise like a man who had trained all his life for combat. The crowd gasped as one guard fell hard into the dust. The human pointed the spear at the others. "I don't want to fight you," he said, "but I will if I must." The guards hesitated, fear in their eyes. They had fought rebels before. They had fought criminals. But never a human. The elder's voice cracked with fury. "You dare defy us? You think you can stand against our law alone?" The human looked straight at him, his voice steady. "Alone? I don't stand alone. Not today." He pointed to the crowd. "Look at them. They are watching. They see the truth. You call this justice, but they know it's cruelty. And cruelty always falls. The alien girl looked around. For the first time, she saw two people in the crowd whispering, shifting uneasily. Some eyes no longer burned with hatred. They burned with doubt. The executioner growled. He raised his hammer higher, ready to bring it down. But before he could swing, the human stepped closer and locked eyes with him. If you crush her arm, executioner, then you'll prove to every soul here that your law is nothing but fear. Is that what you are? A monster who hides behind fear. The hammer trembled. The executioner's hands shook. For the first time, doubt touched his face. The elder shouted desperately, "Do it! Kill her now! Kill them both!" The human did not back down. His voice rang out like thunder across the square. "Then kill me first." The words froze everything. The hammer did not fall. The guards did not strike. Even the elders. Voice faltered. The human stood tall, his body between the girl and death. He did not plead. He did not beg. He dared them. The crowd could see it clearly now. This was no coward. This was no thief. This was a warrior, ready to die for someone he did not even know. A boy in the crowd whispered loudly, "He's protecting her." Another voice followed, "He's not even one of us, but he stands for her." And then another, "Why should we stay silent?" The elder's face twisted in fear as he saw the tide turning. The girl, still on her knees, whispered, "Up to him. You don't even know me. Why do this?" For the first time, the human looked down at her. His face was calm, but his eyes held a storm of memories, because once someone stood for me, and it saved my life. The girl's throat tightened. Tears blurred her vision. No one had ever protected her before. And now, here was a stranger, a human risking his life for her. A dangerous stand the square was alive with whispers now. The human's words had shaken something deep inside the people. They had lived in silence for too long, but his defiance cracked the chains of fear. The elder saw it too. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd, and his voice thundered like a whip. "Do not listen to him. He is an outsider. He does not know our pain. He does not know our hunger. He does not know our laws." The elder lifted his staff high. "Guards, strike him down. End this insult before it poisons our people." The guards hesitated. Their feet shuffled. None dared meet the human's eyes. The executioner still held the heavy hammer, but his grip trembled. His heart was split between orders and doubt. The human's voice broke through the tension again. Strong, clear, unafraid. "You call me an outsider. Maybe I am. But that is why I see what you do not. You starve your people with fear. You crush the weak to protect the strong. But strength without mercy is not strength at all. It is weakness hiding in armor." His words carried across the dry air. The people leaned in, their eyes wide. They were hearing things no one had dared to say before. The elder snarled, "Enough. Guards, kill him now, or you will share his fate." At last, 2 guards rushed forward, their spears aimed at the human. The human did not retreat. He stepped into their attack. The first guard thrust his spear, but the human twisted sideways, catching the shaft and yanking it free. The second guard swung wildly, but the human struck his wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. In moments, both spears were on the ground. The human kicked one back to the alien girl. "Hold it," he told her firmly. Her hands shook, but she obeyed, clutching the weapon tight. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had power. The crowd gasped. As the human raised the other spear toward the elder, "You hide behind your soldiers. You send others to kill for you. But I stand here, alone, unafraid." The elder's face turned red with rage. He pounded his staff on the ground. "You dare threaten me, human? I am the voice of law. Without law, we are nothing." The human shook his head slowly. No, without justice, you are nothing. A sudden shout came from the back of the crowd. He is right. All heads turned. An old woman, her back bent from years of labor, stepped forward. Her voice was rough but strong. Too many times we have watched children punished for hunger. Too many times we have buried the weak while the strong drink deep. Is this law? Or is this cruelty? The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some nodded. Others cried out in agreement. The elder's eyes widened. Fear flickered in them. He slammed his staff again. Silence. This is rebellion. You would follow a stranger? You would betray your own people? The human did not move. His eyes swept across the people. His voice was steady, almost calm. I do not ask you to follow me. I ask you to follow what you know is right. Look at her. He pointed at the girl, still clutching the spear, her arm marked with dust and bruises. She is just a child. She wanted water, and for this they would have crushed her arm. Tell me, who among you has never known thirst? Who among you has never prayed for mercy? The people lowered their heads. Many clenched their fists. The elder shouted again, desperate now. He speaks poison. If you listen to him, your homes will burn. Your children will starve. The human raised his spear high, his voice cutting through the elder's lies. No, if you keep living under this law, your children will never know freedom. They will never know hope. They will only know fear. The words struck like thunder. The people began shouting, not in anger at the human, but in anger at their leaders. Enough! No more! She speaks truth. The crowd surged forward, pressing closer to the square. The guards looked around nervously. The executioner lowered his hammer completely. His shoulders slumped as he muttered, I will not harm a child again. The elder's face twisted with terror. He shouted at the guards desperately. Hold them back. Kill him. Kill them all. But no one moved. The people had shifted. The fear that once chained them was breaking. The human lowered his spear. His voice was quiet, but full of fire. You see, elder, the law you built was not made to protect them. It was made to control them, and control cannot last forever. A girl whispered up at him. They're listening. They're listening to you. The human gave her a small nod. Not to me, to themselves. They've always known the truth. They just needed someone to remind them. The elder screamed with rage, his voice cracking. Then I will end you myself. He raised his staff, rushed forward. But he was old, his movements weak and desperate. The human did not even raise his weapon. He simply stepped aside. The elder stumbled, falling hard onto the sand. His staff broke in two. The crowd gasped. For the first time, their leader looked small, helpless, defeated. The human turned to the people and raised his voice one last time. The choice is yours. You can live by fear, or you can rise with hope. The crowd roared with a single voice. Hope. The girl clutched the spear tighter. She looked at the human with wide eyes, her voice trembling with awe. You've changed everything. And she was right. The spark of rebellion. The elder lay on the sand, his staff broken beside him. His voice was hoarse as he cried, Guards, help me, strike him down. Obey your elder. But no one moved. The guards looked at each other, fear in their eyes. Not fear of the human, but fear of the crowd. The people were no longer silent. They were no longer bowed. Their voices rose, strong and angry. No more. Enough of this law. We want justice. The human stood tall, his spear pointed downward, refusing to strike. He did not need to. His calm defiance had already cut deeper than any weapon. The alien girl clutched her spear and stepped closer to the fallen elder. Her small shadow stretched across the sand. For the first time in her life, she did not tremble. "You were ready to crush my arm," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "But now look at you, weak, alone." The elder spat in the dirt. "You dare speak to me, child? You are nothing. Without law, there is only chaos." The human's voice cut across his words. "Without mercy, there is only cruelty. And cruelty always destroys itself." A low growl rose from the people, carried like the wind. They had been beaten down for so long, but now the truth burned in their hearts. A mother pushed forward, holding a thin, pale child in her arms. She lifted her voice. "My son begged for water. He was punished for stealing a handful of drops. What kind of law starves children?" Another man shouted from the back, his fists shaking. "My brother was whipped until his back broke, all because he gathered roots to feed his family. The elders called it theft. Is this justice?" Voices echoed one after another. Anger, grief, and hope tangled together. The executioner, still holding his heavy hammer, dropped it to the ground with a loud thud. His deep voice boomed. "I will not break bones for these laws any more." Gasps filled the air. The hammer lay heavy in the sand, a symbol of chains broken. The elder's eyes widened in panic. "Traitors, all of you," he screamed. "If you rise against the law, you rise against the gods themselves." But his words no longer struck fear. The human stepped forward, his eyes hard as steel. "Your gods do not demand this. This is not divine. This is you hiding behind fear, feeding off suffering. But your time is over." The elder tried to rise, but his knees buckled. His voice shook. You will doom them all. Without control, they will destroy each other." The human crouched beside him, speaking softly, but every word was sharp. As a blade. "No, they will heal each other. They will stand together, and you will no longer decide who lives and who suffers." The crowd erupted with a single cry, "Freedom!" The sound shook the square, rolling through the desert air. People who had once been silent now shouted as one. They surged forward not to kill, but to protect the child and the human who had stood for her. The guards lowered their spears. Some dropped them entirely. One by one, they stepped back from the elder's side and joined the crowd. The elder's face turned pale. His power had vanished like smoke. The human raised his spear high. "This is only the beginning. You have the strength to break these chains. But if you stop now, if you turn away, the old laws will return. Do not stop until justice is real." The people cheered, their voices fierce. For the first time in years, hope was louder than fear. The girl's eyes shone with tears. She looked at the human and whispered, "You saved me." "But you also saved them." The human placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, they saved themselves. I only reminded them of who they were." But the elder was not finished. His voice cracked as he shouted, "You fools! You think you are free? You think the stranger brings you hope? He brings only war. The council will hear of this. Armies will come. And when they do, you will beg for my law again." The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat. His words carried a shadow of truth. If greater powers heard of rebellion, they might crush it swiftly. The human did not flinch. He looked over the crowd, his voice steady. "Then let them come. Because now you know you are not slaves. And once a people remember their strength, no army can take it away again." The silence broke. The crowd roared louder than before, their voices rolling like thunder across the desert. The girl turned to him, her voice small but steady. "They will come for you, for all of us. What will we do?" The human met her eyes. His answer was calm, unshaken. "Then we prepare. Together." The rebellion had begun. The desert people had lived in chains for generations. But now, with one act of defiance, the fire of freedom had been lit. And the desert burns. The desert was quiet that night. Too quiet. The people huddled in their tents, whispering about freedom, about the human who had defied the elder, about the spark that now burned in their hearts. For the first time, they dreamed of a life without chains. But freedom was never won so easily. On the horizon, dark shapes moved under the starlight shadows of armored machines, marching in silence. The elder had kept his promise. He had sent word to the High Council. And the council had answered with fire. The first warning came with the sound of drums. Not desert drums of celebration, but the deep, mechanical beating of war machines. The ground shook as if the desert itself trembled. The young girl, the one who had nearly lost her arm, ran into the square, her eyes wide. "They're coming," she shouted. "The enforcers are coming." Fear rushed through the crowd like a cold wind. Mothers clutched their children. Men reached for tools, spears, and broken weapons. The rebellion was only days old, and already the weight of an empire marched against it. The human stood in the center of the square, calm as stone. He looked toward the horizon, where faint red lights glowed. "They want to burn your hope," he said, his voice low but steady. "They want to crush the fire before it spreads. If you run now, they will hunt you forever. If you stand together, you can fight." The executioner, who had once lifted his hammer for the elders, stepped forward. His voice was deep and fierce. "And we stand. If death comes, let it come with dignity, not chains." The crowd murmured in agreement, but their hands still trembled. The night turned red when the first fire shells fell. Explosions lit up the sand dunes, and burning wind tore through the village. Tents collapsed, children screamed, and smoke filled the air. The council's enforcers had arrived. They marched in black armor, faces hidden, carrying rifles that spat fire. They moved like a storm disciplined, merciless, unstoppable. The elder, dragged forward on a litter, pointed at the human. "There! That is the traitor, the off-worlder. Take his head, and the rebellion dies with him." The enforcers raised their rifles, but the human did not move. He stepped forward, placing himself between the soldiers and the villagers. His eyes were calm, but his voice thundered. "You can burn tents. You can break bones, but you cannot kill an idea. These people are free now. No fire can take that away." The soldiers did not hesitate. They opened fire. The villagers screamed, diving for cover. But the human moved like lightning. With nothing but a spear in his hand, he spun, struck, and deflected blasts of energy. The spear hummed, glowing faintly as if alive. It was no ordinary weapon. Gasps filled the air. The people had seen weapons before, but never one like his. It was old, ancient, human-made, but far beyond anything the desert tribes had imagined. The girl grabbed a fallen soldier's weapon, her hands shaking, but her eyes burning with determination. She shouted, "If he fights, so will we." Her voice cracked through the smoke like a whip. One by one, others followed. Farmers, shepherds, mothers, and children picking up what they could, from spears to rifles to stones. The crowd became an army. The executioner lifted his hammer and roared, charging into the enemy lines. Sparks flew as hammer met steel. The desert night turned into a battlefield. The elder screamed from his litter, his face twisted in fury, and "Fear! Fools, you'll all die. The council's power is endless." But his voice was drowned out by the clash of rebellion. The human fought at the front, every strike of his spear sending enemies crashing down. His movements were sharp, practiced, the way of a veteran who had fought wars before. His calmness in chaos was not natural. It was learned, bought with blood, and for the first time, The people saw him not just as a savior, but as a warrior. The battle burned through the night. Fires spread, lighting up the sand like a second sun. Screams echoed, but so did cries of defiance. The villagers fought with desperation, but also with hope that had been born only days ago. When the smoke began to clear, dozens of soldiers lay broken in the sand. The villagers stood, battered and bloodied, but alive. Their square was scarred, their homes burned, but their spirit was unbroken. The elder lay silent, staring at the ruins. His power was gone. The girl, clutching her scorched weapon, looked. At the human. "They will not stop, will they?" she asked. "The council will send more. Bigger armies, stronger fire." The human nodded slowly. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. "No, they will not stop. Not until you are crushed or until you are free." The people gathered around him, their faces lit by the flames of their burning homes. Fear still lingered in their eyes, but it was no longer stronger than their courage. The executioner spoke, his voice heavy. "Then what do we do now?" The human planted his spear in the sand. The metal tip glowed in the firelight. "Now," he said, "we prepare for war." That night the desert burned, but from the ashes an army was being born. The council had come to crush a spark. Instead, they had fueled a wildfire god, and in the heart of it all stood the human, silent and unbroken, his shadow long across the flames. The war for freedom had truly begun. The human's secret, the fire still smoldered in the desert village. Smoke rose into the sky like black rivers, and the smell of ash hung heavy in the air. The people were silent, too tired to weep, too wounded to sing. They had fought, and against all odds, they had survived. But survival was not victory. The girl who had once been accused of stealing water sat near the ruins of her family's tent. She held the weapon she had stolen from a fallen soldier, staring at it as if it were a snake. Her hands shook, but not from fear. From questions. She finally looked up at the man who had saved them. "Who are you, really?" she asked. The question spread through the crowd like fire. The villagers turned toward him, their faces hard, waiting. They had followed him in battle. They had risked their lives. Now they wanted the truth. The human stood by the broken well, his spear planted in the sand. The faint glow of its blade lit his face. He had fought like no man they had ever seen. His weapon was older than the desert, yet stronger than the council's rifles. He did not speak at first. He looked at the villagers, their eyes heavy with hope and suspicion. Then slowly he pulled the spear from the sand. "This is not just a weapon," he said, his voice calm, steady. "It is a memory." The people frowned, confused. He raised the spear. "This was forged long before your council. Long before. Your tribes lived under chains. This is human steel. A relic of wars fought in the stars." Gasps filled the crowd. The villagers glanced at one another. Human steel? Wars in the stars? The executioner stepped forward, his arms crossed, his voice rough. "Then you are no wanderer. You are a soldier." The human nodded. His face carried the weight of centuries. "I was a soldier of Earth. My people once fought empires that thought themselves gods. We were broken, but we were never destroyed. I came here to hide. But when I saw what they were doing to you, I could not stay silent." "The girl whispered, "You were hiding?" "Here, in our desert?" "Yes," the human said softly. "I fled battles long forgotten. But when I saw a child nearly lose her arm for water, I remembered who I was. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not watch children suffer." His words hit them harder than the council's fire. The villagers stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, not as a wanderer, not as a savior, but as something far greater. But truth brought fear too. One of the older men stepped forward, his face pale. If the council learns what you are, they will not send soldiers next time. They will send armies, machines, fire enough to burn the desert itself. The human's eyes darkened. They already will. But this time, you won't face it alone. You have me, and you have this. He lifted the spear. The glow brightened, humming with strange energy. The villagers leaned closer, drawn to it like moths to flame. The executioner asked, his voice cautious, "What is it? Why does it shine?" The human lowered his gaze to the weapon. "It holds a secret. Inside is a shard of something older than any empire. A memory of battles where humanity fought the impossible and survived. It only answers to one who has bled. For others," he paused, then looked at the villagers. "Tonight it answered me, but tomorrow it may answer to you." The villagers exchanged uneasy looks. Their fear was real, but so was their awe. The girl rose, clutching her rifle. "If the council is coming with fire, then we fight with fire too. You have your spear. We have our courage. Teach us. Show us how humans fight." Her words struck like thunder. The villagers murmured, some nodding, some still afraid. But hope had taken root again. The human studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. If you wish to fight, then you will fight as humans do. Not as slaves, not as prey, but as free people." That night, under the broken stars, the training began. The human moved among them, teaching them how to hold a rifle, how to strike with a spear, how to stand together instead of apart. He showed them how to use shadows, how to read the land, how to turn fear into strength. The villagers listened, clumsy at first, but quick to learn. Their arms ached, their voices cracked, but for the first time they felt power in their hands. The executioner swung his hammer again and again. Sparks. Flying. The girl fired until her shoulder burned. Even the old men, though weak, practiced with spears, refusing to be left behind. The desert echoed with new sounds, training cries, footsteps in the sand, and the steady voice of the human guiding them. But even as they trained, the horizon was not silent. Scouts brought word that the council was gathering forces beyond the dunes. Bigger armies. War machines. The villagers knew what was coming. But this time they did not tremble. The girl whispered to herself as she wiped dust from her. "Rifle. They burned our homes. They tried to break us. Now we burn them back." The human heard her words. He did not smile, but his eyes held something fierce, something dangerous, because he knew she was right. That night, as the villagers rested, the human stood alone on a dune. He stared at the stars, his spear glowing faintly in his hand. He spoke softly, almost as if to the weapon itself. "I thought I had left that life behind, but war has found me again." The wind carried his words away. The desert was waiting. The council was coming. And for the first time, humanity's secret had been revealed. The war had only just begun. The last stand in the dunes, the desert was silent before dawn. The sand lay cold and still, as if it too was holding its breath. Then came the sound. First, a low rumble, then a grinding roar. Machines. The council's army had arrived. On the horizon, black shapes rose like giants' war engines taller than towers, soldiers in endless lines, banners glowing with cruel symbols. Their weapons burned in the half-light, ready to erase the village from existence. The villagers stood on the dunes, their shadows long against the sand. They were not soldiers. They were farmers, water carriers, stone breakers. But now spears and rifles were in their hands. Their hearts pounded, but none stepped back. At the front stood the human, his glowing spear in hand, his eyes fixed on the enemy. The council commander's voice thundered through a machine speaker, shaking the dunes. You dare resist? You dare fight. You are dust. And dust cannot defy fire. The villagers wavered, fear creeping in. But then the human raised his spear high. The glow flared bright, burning like a second sun. Dust can choke fire, he said, his voice carrying across the dunes. And humans? We are the storm. A roar rose from the villagers, louder than fear, louder than doubt. The battle began. The council's machines advanced, their cannons spitting fire. Explosions ripped the sand, throwing men and women to the ground. But the villagers did not scatter. They remembered their training. Hold the line. The human shouted. The executioner swung his massive hammer, smashing a council soldier from his machine. The girl fired her rifle again and again, striking enemies with deadly aim. The villagers fought in small groups, covering one another, moving. Like the human had taught them, the human himself was a storm. His spear tore through steel like paper, his movements faster than the eye could follow. Each strike carried the weight of ancient battles, each blow fueled by rage for every child the council had tried to destroy. But the council's power was vast. A war engine marched forward, its massive cannon glowing. One shot could wipe out the entire defense. The villagers froze. The human did not. He sprinted across the sand, dodging fire, his cloak burning at the edges. He leaped onto the engine, driving his spear deep into its metal chest. The weapon hummed, then exploded in light. The machine screamed as its circuits fried, collapsing into the dunes with a thunderous crash. The villagers cheered, hope surging like fire. The council commander, furious, ordered everything forward. Waves of soldiers rushed the dunes. The fight turned brutal, steel against steel, rifle shots cracking. Villagers falling, but others rising to take their place. Blood stained the sand, but no one surrendered. The girl fought at the human's side now, her rifle empty, her hands gripping a stolen blade. She blocked a strike aimed at him, her face fierce. "You taught us to fight like humans," she said between breaths. "Now fight with us." The human gave her a short, grim nod. Together, the sky burned with fire. The dunes shook with thunder. The villagers should have broken, should have run. But they did not, because now they were more than villagers. They were warriors. At last, the commander himself appeared, towering in black armor, wielding a weapon that could shatter stone. He stepped through the bodies, his eyes fixed on the human. "You are no villager," he growled. "You are the last of a dead race. I will end you here." The human stepped forward, spear glowing brighter than ever. "Humanity does not die," he said. "We endure." They clashed. The commander's blows shook the earth, sparks flying with every strike. The human moved with deadly precision, his spear cutting arcs of light. The fight raged, faster, harder, until finally one opening. The human drove the spear through the commander's chest. The weapon blazed, bursting with ancient power. The commander screamed as light tore through him, and then he was gone. Dust on the wind. Silence fell. The council's soldiers looked at one another. Without their commander, without their engines, they faltered. And then they broke. They fled into the dunes, leaving only their dead behind. The villagers stood trembling, their weapons still raised. Then slowly they lowered them. The battle was over. The human stood in the sand, his spear dim now, its glow fading. His body was tired, blood dripping from cuts and burns, but his eyes were alive. The girl walked to him, her face streaked with dust and tears. "You saved us," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, you saved yourselves. You fought. You endured. You became more than they believed." The villagers gathered around, some crying, some silent, all staring at the man who had stood with them. The executioner dropped his hammer into the sand. "What now?" He asked. The human looked at the horizon, where smoke still rose, but the sky was clearing. Now you rise. The council will return, but you will not kneel again. You are free, and freedom is worth any price. The villagers bowed their heads, not in worship, but in respect. The girl, clutching her broken rifle, whispered, "Then teach us more. Teach us everything. Let us fight as humans fight." The human gazed at them, his people now, his family. A faint smile touched his lips, and the desert will no longer be silent. It will roar with warriors. He planted his spear in the sand. The glow returned, faint but steady, like a heartbeat dot, and as the sun rose over the dunes, it did not shine on slaves, it shone on the first human army born in the desert, *the And.